financially independent for most parents might mean exactly what you're talking about. I don't have to support my child anymore. They're out of the house. They're graduated. They're self-sufficient in their finances.
But what you teach is something different, yes?
Yeah. In my world, financial independence means a position where someone no longer has to work for money.
Today, I am joined by Dan Sheeks, the author of the new book, First to a Million, A Teenager's Guide to Achieving Early Financial Freedom, and the accompanying workbook. These two resources were written specifically for Gen Z to introduce them to early financial freedom strategies, concepts, and mindsets so they can live their best life. In addition, he's a high school business teacher, personal finance advocate, early financial freedom achiever, and real estate investor. Dan launched Sheeks Freaks in late 2019, an app-based community dedicated to helping young people learn money management skills, start investing in real estate, and pursue early financial independence. He does this by helping Gen Z use specific methods of saving, earning extra income, and investing to set them on track to purchase real estate investment properties in their early 20s and achieve financial independence at a young age. Dan, thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks for having me, Emma. I'm excited to talk a little bit.
Yeah, and I particularly love the topic of money, so I can't wait. Let's jump right in. So I want to start with you explaining to us why financial literacy, I mean, obviously it's important, but it's more important than ever right now. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think for teens, the reason I am so focused and passionate about advocating for financial literacy is because in today's world, more than in the past generations, there's so much information out there for free, easily available, that some of it's good and some of it's bad. And so teaching our teens about money, it's always been important. I think it's always been lacking, but it's always been important. Now it's even more important because if parents and schools don't teach teens about money, then social media will. And a recent study came out that showed that teens do rely on TikTok and YouTube as much as their parents for financial advice and money questions, which is, it's not entirely bad because there's some great accounts out there, but it's just something we all need to pay attention to.
Yeah, absolutely. I am one of those that has just always said, why do we not teach this in schools? I mean, every single person interacts with money, finances on a daily basis. Why is it not taught in schools?
That's a long answer because there's more than one reason. The top two answers are money and politics. It's just the world we live in, and I'll try to keep it short. So money, I think most people know that in the United States, public education is severely underfunded. Mm-hmm. And so even if you can manage to convince a decision maker, whether that's a principal, superintendent, school board, or even a state legislator, even if you can convince them that personal finance as a class should be a requirement for high school graduation, which I strongly advocate for, mm-hmm. It's a whole nother, ball game when you talk about how are they going to fund it. And when schools don't have money for the things that they absolutely need, it's hard to add anything for the things that they currently are doing. It's hard to add things on top of that when the funding isn't there. And the second reason, politics, and try to keep this short too, those decision makers that I was referring to, their jobs are critiqued based on data, for better or worse. How do students score on standardized tests is the main thing, and high school graduation rate, things like that. And, personal finance and financial literacy are not tested in standardized tests. That's stuff like math, science, reading, writing. And so if their job performance is based on data and personal finance doesn't factor into that data, they are much less motivated to make changes in that regard. So mm-hmm. There are other reasons, but those are the two main ones.
Yeah, not a top priority because of those test scores, right? Mm-hmm. So let's start talking about helping young people achieve financial independence. And first, what I want to say is I have met people, and I used to be one of these people that when I heard the term financial independence, I heard a young person who makes enough money to be independent from their parents, to not rely on their parents. But I think you mean financial independence in another way. Is that right?
I do. Yeah.
Can you
And
define? Sorry, go ahead.
yeah, and your understanding isn't wrong. There are probably two or more meanings of financial independence. Financially independent for most parents might mean exactly what you're talking about. I don't have to support my child anymore. They're out of the house. They're graduated. They're self-sufficient in their finances.
But what you teach is something different, yes?
Yeah, in my world, financial independence means a position where someone no longer has to work for money, because
job, earned income, right?
Yes, earned income is now an option. And for most people, that happens around age 65 when we retire, right? We are at that point financially independent. We have saved and invested enough over the course of many, many years, 40 plus years, that we can say we are now financially independent. We can retire. The early financial independence movement, which has gained a lot of steam and attention in the last decade, it's the idea that if you do things differently early in life, or at any point in life, really, if you make different money decisions, then that number 65 years old can start to come down. And it can come down a lot if young people are making really good decisions. But I will say this: early financial independence is not for everybody. Early financial independence is not the right choice. There is no right or wrong here. When I talk to the members of my community and in my book, I say over and over again, I just want to present other options. And then you, the reader or the listener, need to decide what's best for you and your pathway, because I can't tell you what is right. Because there's nothing wrong with working until you're 65. And that's a very noble pathway. But I think all young people, and really everyone, should understand that there are other options.
And that's what I love about what you're doing, because I feel that the common, storyline or paradigm is, to become an employee and to work until you retire. And so I don't think a lot of people realize that there are other options out there. There are other ways to bring in money and to financially support yourself. So I'm so glad that you're doing this work and bringing this to young people.
Thanks.
So let's talk. So you have 4 mechanisms that you use to teach Gen Z how to reach early financial independence. Can you tell us about those?
Absolutely, yeah. And this is the genesis of the book, are the 4 mechanisms to early financial independence. Number 1 is earn more. And by the way, these work for anybody. My book, I specifically wrote it for teens. That's my niche. I'm a high school business teacher. I love working with young people. But anybody who's new to these ideas of early financial independence, I think my book is, I think, a great introduction to all of these topics and strategies. So mechanism number 1, earn more. Most people have one income stream for their household, or if it's a married couple, they might have 2 income streams. And those are what we call W-2 jobs, where you're working for an employer and you get a steady paycheck. Earn more says, if, again, we're talking about doing things differently, find another way or 2 to earn some extra income. That could be a side hustle. It could be a small business. And by small business, it does not have to be complex or require a ton of time. It could be as simple, when I talk to teens, it could be as simple as mowing a few lawns around your neighborhood, walking some dogs, doing odds and end jobs for your neighbors. It really can be pretty simple.
Selling artwork, stickers of your artwork on Etsy.
Absolutely. And I love that even better, because that's another concept we talk about in the book, which is called passive income. Once you upload that artwork to a site like Etsy, you have to do some promotion and you have to drive people to your site, but you are making money without, after they're loaded up into the site, you're making money without working. It's passive income. I love that. Great example. So yeah, mechanism number 1 is earn more. Mechanism number two is spend less, which is a lot around the idea of frugality, which is spending money only on things you value. Some people confuse being cheap with frugality, and those are very different. Cheap says, I don't spend money. Frugality says, I spend money on things I value and lavishly on the things I value, but only on the things I value. So for instance, I am not a foodie. I don't really appreciate going out to nice restaurants. So, and my wife doesn't either. So we don't spend money on, we don't really go out to eat hardly ever, honestly, maybe once a week, because we don't value it. So we don't spend money on something we don't value. So spending less is about, the typical American lives paycheck to paycheck, or about 50%, which means they're spending everything they make. So frugality says, let's not do that. Let's expedite our trip to financial independence by spending less. So if you do those two things, mechanism number one, you're earning more, and then mechanism number two, you're spending less, all of a sudden your savings rate starts to grow. You're saving more of the money you make. That leads us to mechanism number three, which is save the difference. And so the average American saves, depending on what site you look at, somewhere between 5 and 10% of their income. And we're talking about adults here, not teens. 5 to 10% is okay if you want to retire at age 65. If you want to, and retire is kind of a loose word, but if you want to reach financial independence by age 65, if you want to do that years earlier, then that savings rate needs to be larger than 10%, 20, 30, 40. There are members of the FIRE community that are doing 70, 80% of their income is going into savings and investing. The larger that number, the faster you're going to get there. But again, I wouldn't recommend getting too extreme, because then you can kind of burn out. So you're saving more money. The mechanism number four is to invest your savings wisely. And that can look there's so many different ways to invest. The top two in the community, the early FI community, are real estate investing and indexed fund investing, which is you're investing in the stock market, but you're investing in all of the stock market.
Okay. See, I love that you are tailoring this work to young people, because when you talk about spending less, the younger you are, the less financial commitments you have. So this is really the perfect opportunity to spend less and to put away as much as you can.
Yeah, I agree. So sometimes people will ask me, why did you choose to teach this to young people, teenagers? Say, really, I'm Gen Z, like 15 to 25. Yeah. And I say, because they are a clean slate. They have not yet formed bad habits and dug themselves into a hole. I have a lot of friends who work with millennials or maybe, Gen Xers. And that's, I think, more difficult, because those people have perhaps tanked their credit score. They have consumer debt like credit cards. They have student loan debt. They have car loans. They live in a very nice house, which is, your housing is your number one expense. So as soon as that gets leveled up, we call it lifestyle inflation, and you're used to living in a certain type of house or apartment, then it's really hard to dial that back down. Yeah. But teenagers, they haven't made any of those mistakes. They haven't formed bad habits. So it's really easy just to teach them the right way from the beginning and then let them just crush it.
Yeah. So starting early is awesome and amazing and going to set them up for success. However, they're also still in that stage where they're not really long-term thinking, right? So how can we motivate them to start thinking about these things and taking action in this way?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I get this question all the time, and it's a really good one. Especially parents want to know, how do I make my teen care about their financial future? Or how do I motivate them? Motivating them is somewhat easy. For instance, I give the example all the time. I happen to think my book is a good resource. So I will tell parents, buy my book, read it yourself first, by the way, as a parent, so that it's legit and it's going to teach some good things to your child. Then give it to your child. And if they're not really a reader, or they're not interested in, their financial future, then incentivize them and say, I will pay you $100 to read this book, but you have to read it in the next 2 weeks. And when you get done, I'm going to ask you a few questions, because I read it myself. And if you answer and you don't have to make them hard, Just make sure they read the book and then give them $100. If $100 isn't enough, maybe give them $200 or offer them, some other kind of incentive. It doesn't have to be cash, but whatever would work for your child.
Mhm.
And so it doesn't have to be for my book. It could be for any piece of financial literacy education that you want them to partake in. A class, if they take personal finance at their high school, it's not offered at every high school, but if it's at theirs, say, I will give you X if you get an A in this class. I will give you X if you give me a monthly report on what or even weekly or even daily report on what you're learning in that class. And let's talk about it together. But at the end of the day, all parents know you cannot make a teenager do anything.
Right.
They're independent, right? And so when parents say, how do I make my teenager want to learn about money or learn about money? I say, well, you can't. We can do things to incentivize and motivate, but at the end of the day, they're going to do what they want. What lets me sleep at night is that I reach a lot of young people in my classroom and in my community, and maybe they're not taking the information and acting on it today, but the seed is planted so that maybe 5, 15, 25 years down the road, they may then decide that they are now ready to enact some of these strategies. And then they may jump into Google and start saying, how do I invest in the stock market? How do I invest in real estate? How do I reach financial independence? And, we don't get to decide when they take action, but we can at least inform them of the option and the different strategies that are out there.
Yeah, absolutely. I get asked a similar question too, because when I work with young people, I'm helping them solidify their values and priorities and things like that. And sometimes folks are like, how, but it changes, that changes in life. And I'm like, yeah, of course it does. But if they've had the opportunity to learn this now and to get the chance to go through this now, then they know where to go and what to do when they get there. Right. So I like what you said about planting that seed and giving them the knowledge now, because they'll draw on it at some point.
Exactly. Yeah. And I love what you're doing. That makes total sense. Very similar.
Yeah. Well, this is amazing. Can you share with the parents watching this how they can get a hold of a copy of your book?
Yeah. So the book is called First to a Million. It's on Amazon. It's everywhere. If you buy it from the publisher, which is Bigger Pockets, if you buy the book and the workbook together, and honestly, I think the workbook is actually a more valuable piece than the book, because it tells the teen what to do, when to do it, how to do it, why you're doing it different. And it doesn't have to, they can pick and choose what they want to do, but it gives them an action plan. But if you buy them both on biggerpockets.com, you get a discount. You can buy them each on Amazon as well. Yeah.
Okay. And how can a person find Sheeks Freaks?
So yeah, I have a website that anybody can access called sheeksfreaks.com, SheeksFreaks. By the way, freaks is the whole idea that if you are young and you are motivated enough to learn about and focus on your financial future, then you are freakish, because that is very different. Most young people don't want to think about their financial future. So sheeksfreaks.com is the main website. There's lots of resources there for the teen or Gen Zer. On that website, you will see a link to learn more about the Sheeks Freaks community, which is an app-based community for Gen Z, only for Gen Z, by the way. Adults, I kick adults out. They're not allowed. It's only for Gen Z, so they can surround themselves with like-minded young people. And the members in that community are honestly really amazing, and they are crushing it in so many ways. I will say this, as a teacher, I do deal with parents quite a bit. So you asked me before, Emma, I thought of something. So parents, please email me, and I have a free PDF that I will send you that outlines what I think is the best strategy for parents to use with teenagers. I call it the ultimate teen money hack for parents.
Nice.
I will send you the free PDF. Email me at dan@sheeksfreaks.com. I have other resources I'll share with you as well.
Amazing. All right. So I'll put that link and your email in the description so they can just copy and paste it if they need to. Dan, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Talk to you later.